He only wanted a cook, but instead, a young woman showed up with 5 orphaned siblings, begging for one last chance. Local official Bert Weston tried to tear them apart, hiding behind regulations and heartless paperwork. But Lacey had courage, and Aiden had something even stronger: a buried past, legal files, and one final favor to call in. But just wait until you see how this quiet rancher turned the tables, and why justice, in the end, stood tall on that porch. Aiden Keller preferred silence. It wasn't just comfort, it was survival. After war took his brothers in arms, and sickness stole his wife, words had lost their meaning. He'd rebuilt the 3-star ranch alone, plank by plank, in the wind-scoured heart of Wyoming. Out here, the land didn't lie. It punished weakness, rewarded grit, and demanded nothing but your full self. That suited Aiden just fine. With the fall work piling up, he finally pinned a note in town. Cook needed. Room, board, pay by results. No questions. He imagined someone older might show up. A tough, quiet type who knew her way around stew and silence. But when the rickety truck pulled into the dirt driveway, what stepped out wasn't what he expected. A young woman, slim, straight-backed, in worn-out jeans and a hand-me-down flannel. She had a toddler on her hip, eyes wide, thumb in mouth. Behind her trailed 4 more kids, stair-stepped in size like a mismatched parade. The oldest, a teenage boy, stood stiffly, arms crossed, face guarded. Aiden stepped out onto the porch, boots heavy on the boards. "You miss Lacey Jones?" he asked, brow furrowed. "Yes, sir," she answered steady. "These are my brothers and sisters. We couldn't stay at the shelter anymore." His jaw tensed. This wasn't what he wanted. He needed help, not trouble, not a whole wagon load of mouths to feed. "This ain't a family retreat, Miss Jones," he said coldly. "I don't have time or resources for a full house." She looked down, adjusted the baby in her arms, and said quietly, "Just give me one evening. I'll cook supper. If it's not good enough, we'll go by morning." He studied her a beat too long, then gave a short nod toward the house. That night, the kitchen came alive for the first time in years. Lacey moved quickly, with purpose. She found root vegetables, dried meat, and herbs, turned them into thick stew. She baked cornbread, even a peach pie from an old can in the pantry. The kids ate quietly, politely, as if any noise might get them sent away. Aiden didn't say a word. He just ate, slowly, silently, then stood, carried his plate to the sink, and washed it. No compliments, no thanks. But no complaints either. He glanced back once before heading to bed. Lacey was wiping the counter. The toddler slept curled beside his sister on the couch. And that night, for the first time in years, Aiden didn't lock the door. The next day, Aiden didn't ask them to leave, nor the day after. But that didn't mean he welcomed them. His silence wasn't kindness. It was armor. He moved through the ranch like a man who'd built walls too high to climb, tending to fences, checking cattle, fixing the busted irrigation valve behind the barn. He spoke only when necessary. Lacey, to her credit, never asked for more. She cooked, cleaned, kept the kids in line. They learned quickly not to get in Aiden's way, and he made no effort to engage. To him, they were shadows that moved without noise. But by the 3rd week, small cracks formed in his quiet defense. He rose early, as always, and passed the kitchen just as sunlight began brushing the window. There, at the table, sat the youngest girl, Emma, if he remembered right, hands folded, whispering something under her breath over a chipped mug of goat's milk. She wasn't talking to anyone in particular. It was a private moment. Still, it held weight. That kind of hope didn't come easy. Later that day, he spotted the older boy, Danny, hauling buckets from the well, not playing, not asked to, just working, trying to make the load lighter for Lacey. These weren't wild kids tearing up his land. They were survivors, quiet fighters. And it unsettled something deep in Aiden, something he wasn't ready to name. But the real trouble didn't come from within the house. It rolled up in a dusty county truck, driven by a man Aiden had known too long, Bert Weston, the chairman of the local board. Bert stepped out with his usual swagger, holding a clipboard like it was a badge. "Morning, Aiden," he said, not waiting for a reply. "We've had some concerns. Seems there are minors on your property without proper guardianship. That's a violation of safety regulations." Aiden didn't answer, just stared. Bert continued, adjusting his glasses. "Girls got no legal claim. Mothers deceased, fathers absent. Shelter booted them for bad behavior, or so the paperwork says." He handed Aiden a notice. Official, cold, final. "I'll be back Monday. With a transport. It's not your fight, Keller. Don't make it one." Then he turned and left, dust trailing behind him like a storm not yet settled. Aiden stood still for a long time, paper clenched in his hand. He wasn't their father, wasn't even a friend. But something about the way Emma prayed, or the way Danny worked without being asked, had planted a root in ground Aiden thought long dead. And in that moment, for the first time in years, he felt it again. That quiet stirring in the chest, the one that said, "This matters. You can't just let it go." Aiden didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam doors or confront Bert Weston with empty threats. That wasn't his way. Instead, that night, long after the kids were asleep and the house had gone still, he sat at his wife's old desk, powered up the computer, and began reading. The soft hum of the screen lit his tired face, and the dust on the keyboard stirred under his fingers like long-forgotten memories. He opened her legal folders, boxes she hadn't touched since her final case. Folders marked with county codes, custody rights, emergency filings. He read them slowly, carefully, like he was decoding a secret language. Page after page, statute after statute, building something in his mind brick by brick. He didn't have a law degree, but he had time and will, and that was enough. By sunrise, he hadn't slept a minute. The kids were still in bed when he pulled on his coat and drove into town, gravel crunching beneath his tires. The courthouse was quiet that early, but one light was already glowing in the corner office upstairs, the judge's office. Aiden knew it would be. Jack Garrison had always been an early riser. Aiden knocked once, then stepped inside. Jack looked up from his desk, startled for only a second. Then his eyes softened. "Aiden, it's been a while." "I need you to look at something," Aiden said simply, setting the papers on the desk. "I'm not asking for a favor, just the law. These kids, they don't have anyone. But she's trying, and she deserves a chance to keep them together." Jack read, then read again. When he finally looked up, he sighed and gave Aiden a slow, tired smile. "You still make a decent argument, and I guess I still owe you for that night outside Fallujah," he muttered, "but you'll owe me a pie." Aiden cracked a smile for the first time in days. "Peach?" "Always." That Monday, Bert Weston returned to the ranch just after 9. He brought the county vehicle and a clipboard full of papers. He expected resistance, maybe some grumbling. What he didn't expect was what met him at the porch. Lacey stood tall, flanked by her siblings like a row of trees in the wind. Aiden stood beside her, and next to him, a court officer held a fresh set of signed documents. "Miss Lacey Jones has filed for emergency guardianship," the officer said clearly. "Given the circumstances and community support from Mr. Keller, Judge Garrison has approved the petition. You no longer have authority here." Bert opened his mouth, then closed it again. His shoulders sagged. He turned without a word and climbed back into the truck. Dust curled behind him as he drove away, silent and defeated. Aiden stood on the porch for a long while after, watching the road disappear. Then, just barely, the corners of his mouth lifted. 6 months passed. The ranch didn't get quieter. It got louder, filled with footsteps and laughter, with chores done in pairs and cookies that burned once in a while. Lacey still cooked supper every night, even when she was tired. Danny helped with the horses. Emma painted signs for the barn. And Aiden, well, something in him shifted. Not loudly, not all at once, but slowly, like snow melting after a long winter. He stood straighter, walked lighter, even spoke more. He wasn't just the cold cowboy anymore. He was something else now, something warmer, steadier, a man with a family. And everyone who came through the 3-star ranch felt it. If Aiden Keller, a man who had every reason to give up, could still choose to open his door, then maybe hope wasn't gone. Maybe it had just been waiting for the right time to come home.